On this episode of Creative Conversations with Generation Jones, we'll talk to comedian and improvisation master Emilio Perey. He'll tell us how changing sensitivities in audience members affect his performance on stage. And he's got a funny story or two about bath bubbles and being prepared. Hey everyone, thanks for joining us on Season 2 of Creative Conversations with Generation Jones. I'm Maria.
And I'm Stephanie, and we'll be interviewing some fascinating people of a certain age who've been living a life of creativity.
Some do it for a living, and some do it because it feeds their soul.
They all have
I have to do it.
Hey, no, we're not ready for you yet.
All right.
They all have stories and pearls of wisdom to share. So, Maria, before we start, would you remind everyone what Generation Jones is?
Yes. Okay, Generation Jones, we are the folks who were born right at the end of the baby boom from 1954 to 1965.
Those of us that were stuck in the middle of the boomers and Gen X who really didn't fit into either one.
Right, so we're in our 50s and 60s right now.
And we're still tearing it up creatively.
Yeah, baby.
So, here we are in our first interview of Season 2, and we have the wonderful improv comedian and man about town, Emilio Perey.
Wow.
Welcome, Emilio.
Thank you so much for inviting me. And Man About Town, as I mentioned, is questionable. But you know, people who know me know what I'm talking about.
Okay.
So, Emilio, what is your favorite drink?
It is the Manhattan. I love bourbon, but I can't just order bourbon off because they think I'm a savage. But when you say Manhattan, that means sophistication. That I knew Dorothy Parker, and the Algonquin Round Table, which makes me sound better than a drunk.
How do you make your Manhattan?
A lot of people will go to rye now because rye is very popular, but I just go ahead and use bourbon, sweet vermouth, and then bitters. And bitters comes in different flavors now. So I used an orange bitter, and it just adds a little extra flavor, an extra layer of flavor to the cocktail. And it just makes it go down so well.
Excellent. Well, cheers on that.
Cheers.
Clink, clank, clank,
Clink,
clank.
clank.
And sip, sip, right?
Sip,
Right.
sip. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's rude if you don't sip after you clink.
Right. So, Emilio, at what age did you first realize you wanted to be on the stage?
In 4th grade, I was called to arms. I played a snowflake. So you can imagine little kids of color wearing a costume that's all white. I played a snowflake. And my line was, it could be Jack Frost, who was played by someone darker than me.
So you grew up in Charleston, though, right?
I grew up in Charleston, South Carolina, which is not to be confused with the other Charleston. And I also came there from generations. My mother was an original Charlestonian. My father was Filipino, and they met during the big one, WW2.
Real?
Yeah, he was in the Navy, and she worked for the Red Cross. So it's like a 1940s musical.
Typical love story.
And
Yes.
you come from a big family.
Yes, we're of Catholic. There you go.
Say
I
no
need
more.
not fill in the blanks. So there was 9 of us in a station wagon. Imagine. It's pretty scary.
Family vacation,
Wow.
right?
Wow.
Go now, because I'm not pulling over. We heard that a lot.
My goodness.
Are we there yet?
Yes, really.
So, did you go to college?
Yes, I went to the College of Charleston. I went to the High School of Charleston. So see, the Charleston is everywhere. Yes. But,
Did you guys eat Charleston Chew candy bars?
Yes, but it wasn't that peach leather. Peach leather is like early gummies. And
But flat,
yes,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
And they're like a gummy, but they use the skin of the peach as a confection. They soak it in something, and then cover it in sugar, which is always good.
For kids, right?
Anything that's covered in sugar means good, means nutrition. Yes.
So, what did you study in college?
I had an English theater major.
And then when you got out of college, what'd you do when you got out?
I moved to Atlanta because if you grow up in a city where everybody knows you, people would stop me on the street and they would refer to my mother by her maiden name.
Wow.
That's how
Wow.
Charleston it can be. And one time I corrected one of my mother's friends, and she went, "Oh yes, sure, all right." Like she just like brushed me off, like whatever, you know. Your father's not Charlestonian, is he?
You belong here.
So how long did it take when you moved to Atlanta to get involved in improv?
It was really about a year and a half. My roommate had gone to an improv workshop. And this is back in the 80s, the mid 80s, when improv was just unheard of on the East Coast. It was very popular on the West Coast, but it was not even heard of. And our early audiences, we had to educate about improv because they thought we were just a group of stand-ups. And we asked for suggestions. They were caught off guard. And then the suggestions we got from the audience tend to be on the blue side. So we would have to go, "We will take your tasteful suggestions." And that seemed like, all right, you know. So people started to give us tasteful suggestions. And also, audiences tend to get negative when you ask them for like emotions or things like that. So we'd ask for positive emotions, you know, things like that.
And did you get involved in this through the acting community?
Yes. I started going to workshops because my roommate said, "I'm involved in a acting process that you would be perfect for." And I started going to workshops, and I learned, you know, the games and what improv, yes and, which is a big improv technique.
What is that? Explain that to us.
You don't go negative. So when someone comes on stage and says, "How you doing, Hunter Joe?" You take on the "I'm Hunter Joe." You don't go, "No, I'm a plumber." You know, that kind of thing. You don't deny. You just go, "Yes and," you know.
So deflection is what
Exactly.
that is. Can you give us a definition of what improv is?
It is basically going with the flow. You know, you set up your who, what, and where. Like the person who comes in will give you the who or the where, and then you go with that so you can progress the scene. Anytime you bring in a negative, that stops the scene, and we got to start all over. Whereas if you say, if you go with the yes and, you add. You're always adding to the scene. You can disagree, but you can do it in an adding way. Because once they establish where we are and who we are, and you're going with it, you can disagree in the scene, but you're going with the two elements that they've given you. And sometimes they just give you one element. Or sometimes they give you no element, and then you jump in, and they will follow. But you need to learn that.
What was your first real job on the stage? Was it improv or was it acting?
It was acting. My voice had lowered early in life. I'm a man. Testosterone. And so teachers would pick me because my mother taught in school. So by the time I was in first grade, I had no problem standing up in front of a crowd and reading from a book. And so when they would call on anybody wanting to read, I was one of the first people to raise my hand. And my voice was lower, so it would carry. And my mother would read us stories and play characters. So I learned to be animated very early in life. Her favorite was Itsy Bitsy Spider. And she would play the Itsy Bitsy Spider. And my mother is no Itsy Bitsy Spider. So when she climbed up the spout, we would die laughing. Because here you have this woman who's no itsy bitsy spider actually pretending to be a spider and climb up a water spout, which was hilarious and killed us every time. Yeah.
So did you do any acting
Yes.
along the way?
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Yes. When I came to Atlanta, I started auditioning, and I had the face, which was very animated. So my first commercials that I got hired for, like Georgia Lottery and a lot of other things, was just because of my face. I would do expressions and go, like, either look disapproving or happy, and they just absolutely loved it. I worked on a commercial once for Georgia Lottery, and there was definitely some guy there who wanted to be a stage hog, which was he wanted the camera to focus on him. And the director's very smart, would tell him, yeah, you know, go ahead and do that. But I didn't later when I saw the commercial, he had turned the camera on to me. Because I was showing all
you
this
were better.
emotion. Well, I was showing this emotion from his overacting. You know, like,
Didn't I work on one of those with you?
you might have.
You were in a bathtub. We had you in a
Yes,
bathtub.
yes. I remember one time they had me in a bathtub, and they had to keep frothing the bubbles.
Right.
You know, and frothing the bubbles meant them sticking their hand in the water and frothing the bubbles, and I was like, oh, getting kind of close. Getting kind of close to the treasure, if you know what I mean. Not that I mind, but, you know, there is a camera on us. You know. Later, I'll give you my phone number. You know, but yes.
We'll see if we can find that commercial.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
See if you can find it.
many,
Good Lord.
many, many
it was
years
many
ago.
years
Many
ago.
years
We're
ago.
talking like the mid-'80s.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know.
No, everything's available online
This
these
is
days,
true.
right?
That's true.
Yeah.
That's
Some things
true.
we don't want to
Exactly.
be
It's hard to
available
scrub
online.
your history.
I am glad that when I was growing up, there wasn't social media.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we're all thankful for
Yeah,
that.
but you know what? The kids today, they grew up on social media and they don't care. They
No,
put
no, no,
it
no.
all
Oh,
out
they
there.
want it.
Yeah, they
want
do.
it. It's amazing the amount of, which was unheard of when we were growing up, that you would have straight actors that are straight influencers that want that kind of attention. If you had a gay audience back then, they didn't want that because they didn't want to be with that crowd.
Right.
But now, they don't care. You know, whoever will join on there and help them and write
Right.
good critiques or are a fan. Oh yeah, come on, jump on the bandwagon. You know, they're all about that.
Oh yeah.
Totally.
Oh yeah.
I'm gonna take another little sippy in my drinky.
Let's do a little, you know, me too. Not
It's a little
clink.
clink, clink. If you can't hear that, we're
Sippy.
clanking.
That's
We're
good.
clanking drinks. Yeah.
Okay.
Good coffee.
So here in Atlanta, can you give us a sense of the different types of improv groups you've been involved with?
I started with Light Side City Players, which Rob Lowe was not that Rob Lowe, but Rob Lowe started doing workshops with, and he's a very giving, nice, kind man. So I came up in the improv of, if I lay down something, you're going to go with me. And as we were saying, yes, and. But there are other improv groups that work on a different strata. And they can be a little bit more coarse. When I joined Laughing Matters, or when I started Laughing Matters with Tommy Futch, we were of that kind of giving, kind of whatever you say, I'm going to go with. And you have other improv groups, especially on the West Coast, that can be very negative. And they're used to that. And you find in improv groups, once you learn the different techniques that they go with, then you go with that technique. So if you're going with a technique that's very yes and, you're used to that. If you go with a technique that's very argumentative, then you go with that. And it works on a comedy-wise, but you have to know that that's what they're doing. You have to know the background story on that type of improv.
And who are they? It's the audience or your other improv actors?
Other improv players. When you work with the same group of people, they set you up. They make you look good.
Because
And
they
that's
know
the
you're.
object.
They know you're.
Exactly.
What you're
Capable.
capable. You're
capable of.
Yeah. What
Yes,
you-
they
yeah,
know your strengths and weaknesses,
yeah.
and they can actually play to you. Like they knew that I could play female characters really well. So I don't mind playing a wife or Scarlett O'Hara or Betty Davis because I know that in my repertoire. And they've seen that in workshops. So they'll set me up for that. And when you set up other actors or actresses for what you know they can do, you make them look good and they make you look good.
Yeah.
And it's a marriage. Every time you're on stage with a new actor, it's a marriage. And how well are we going to get along?
So it works better if you work with the same people who know your style.
Of course.
Yeah.
With real good improv players, they know pretty soon, within a few seconds, what you like to do. And they'll play up to that, and then you just fill in the blanks.
So you did a lot of different types of improv, mostly with Laughing Matters.
Oh, yes.
Tell us a little bit about that. I know you do corporate and you work with kids, and then you mentioned the NCDC.
NCDC.
Tell us a little about all the different ways improv is used.
We had a corporation that came in from California. So they were used to improv. And they were used to improv in the workplace. which is how people deal with conflict and resolution, which works well for kids now because they have trouble with how to deal with conflict. The basic way kids deal with conflict is to hit you. You hit them, you hit them back. Whereas when we do shows at certain schools for conflict and resolution, we show how you use comedy or whatever, people who have verbal skills and people who don't have verbal skills, how to deal with that type of conflict. And that helps for resolution so you don't reach for violence or negativity to resolve something. You hear a lot of people who say they survived in prison because they were funny.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Interesting.
Yeah, because if you're going to hit somebody and then you say something funny, they'll stop hitting you. Because deflection. And that's what helps with resolution. And a lot of more kids who deal with that have found a way out because they realize, well, I don't have to hit you. Well, you made me laugh, so that means that there's a different level to you, as opposed to someone who uses their intellectual vocabulary to make the other person look small. Whereas you're turning it around and making them feel, well, that was funny, so you must be a good guy. And like, I can relate to you on this level because you made me laugh, and at home, they don't make me laugh.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
Tell us what the NCDC is.
NCDC is the National Criminal Defense Association. And what it is you work with lawyers, young lawyers, to work on their Perry Mason technique, and older lawyers that have gotten stale. And especially in the Me Too movement, you have to learn that it's different now. Right. How you see people and how you conduct with people, especially lawyers who may be talking with a female client, and the way the younger generation will perceive things that you're saying. You're thinking one thing, but the way they hear it, especially now with millennials, how they're hearing another thing. And how to turn that around to make it in your favor.
And so who are you teaching? You're teaching lawyers?
Lawyers.
Okay.
And as well as they have never dealt with a criminal. And we're basically playing criminals. And I remember one lawyer I was working with, and at one point I stopped him doing his cross-examination just to basically look at me. I said, excuse me, but because he had a purpose. He had a list of things that he was going through, a list of questions that all he saw was like, I've got to get to question 10 because that's my end point. Whereas you have to add humanity to it. Well, I would say, well, just look at me and smile because you've been looking down at that clipboard this whole afternoon. And later he told me after the critique that the instructor gave him, that he told me, he said, my girlfriend says that all the time. And I said, well, you need to listen to your girlfriend. Because those are basic things. But when people get caught up in the system, especially law, they just have certain goals they want to achieve. And they forget about the humanity of it. That is a big part of what you want. And when dealing with any client or anyone, that is the payoff.
Have you been able to follow up with any of those type of clients to see if, when they got to court, if they used the techniques that helped?
Yes. I dealt with a Georgia legislator, and she actually contacted me weeks after we had done a workshop. And she said, Emilio, I was doing this presentation in front of the legislature, and I looked up. I could tell I was losing them. They were like looking at their watch or checking their phone. And I just went off script. I did exactly what you said. I went off script and I just started rattling off some jokes or using the script as a launch point for just some silly things. And they started laughing, but I got them back.
There you go. Yeah.
And that's what it is.
Yes.
She said, and I just thought about you. I said, you taught me that, and it worked. It was a technique I used, and it worked. And especially for a woman in the legislature, to get a bunch of older men to look up and laugh and see what you say. And they see you in a different light.
Right.
They see you as a fresh person.
Yeah. Good job, you. Good job.
Oh, well.
Were you ever able to make a full living doing
Yes.
improv
For
and
about-
acting?
Yeah, for about 10 years.
Oh, good for you. Yeah.
And you worked at Agatha's.
I worked at Agatha's Murder Mystery Theater. It had a script, but we go off script all the time.
It
Whatever.
was a little
worked.
mix of improv and
It was
script.
a little. If there was a joke or something happened, because at Agatha's, audiences would read certain parts. They were given certain parts that we would fill in. So you had 2 actors with like 30 parts and that kind of thing. And sometimes you would have like twins. There'd be twins in two different parts, but one was played by a black woman and another one was played by a white man. And you'd go like, I see the resemblance. That kind of thing. And it's not in the script.
No, yeah.
And but the audience absolutely loved it because it was human.
Right.
And it was exactly the part. And if you were black or white, you laughed at it.
Right.
Because it was just the comparison of what you see in front of you. And I think we've lost some of that. It's good to be aware and everything, but we grew up in a generation where we heard jokes about different religions or different races, and we laughed. We knew the person had no meanness in their heart, but they were just laughing about, we're in this situation, we might as well make fun of it. Because what else are you going to do?
People have lost their sense of humor
In a way,
in a
yeah.
lot of
Well,
ways. I mean,
people-
some ways they haven't, in some ways they have.
Well, people's sensitivities are given more weight these days.
Right,
I
right,
think.
exactly.
But they're
Exactly.
hypersensitive.
Right.
Well, to us, they're hypersensitive, but to them, it's just life.
Well, that's true.
Right.
You're
You know,
right. It's
like
a different
people
generation.
are yelling
Yeah.
about Black Ariel, like Little
Oh,
Mermaid.
yes.
But today, kids like that are like, no, that's the way it should be.
Exactly.
That's the way you see things. And I had to learn that. I had to learn that a lot of, and I consider myself a liberal Democrat. I consider myself a liberal Democrat, but I've got prejudices that I grew up with from my parents.
Yeah. Well, we all have we bring with us
Exactly.
the inherent baggage that we were taught.
Yeah, but you see these kids today, and they're like, no, that's not right.
Yeah.
You know it, and I know it. So you have to take that in consideration because that is the new way. And people they yell and scream about men with ponytails, but no, that's just the new way.
Who cares?
Right.
Yeah,
You know, I mean,
exactly.
it's like they get
Exactly.
upset about the stupidest things
They're
these
stupid,
days.
and they
It's
get
like-
upset about
it's
things
like, really?
that
a cartoon,
our
it's
folks
a,
used to
you
get
know, it's
upset
like-
with, and we used
Well,
to
that's
go,
true.
"You old
That's
timer,
true,
you
you're
old
right. Yeah,
fogey,
you're right.
you know."
That rock and roll music.
Right, and long hair, you hippie,
Yeah,
you know.
That's true.
And now you're yelling about top knots.
Right? Man buns.
Yeah, exactly.
So how has that affected you doing your improv?
It's a big thing. That's a good question. It's different for me because in improv, you're thinking off the top of your head.
Yeah.
And the problem with that is that you could offend someone. What I consider a joke, and our generation consider a joke, would be just an insult.
Yeah.
It would be an insult to women or some type of minority that you're doing on stage that you've done 1,000,000 times before and gotten hilarious laughs. But now people are like, oh no, you stepped in it. That's wrong.
So how does that affect your performance?
Yeah.
It doesn't, I still do improv, but it doesn't affect me as much. I saw Joan Rivers just before she passed, and she was like unreal. I mean, I'd seen her on TV, but I never saw her live on stage or a nightclub act. And she said the N-word and the C-word within the first 5 minutes. The
Really?
first
Wow,
5
Joan.
minutes. I was on the floor laughing, but everybody was looking at each other going, whoa, oh. But you accepted it because she was an old school.
Right.
She was an old school comedian.
Right.
And she didn't say it with malice.
Right, and
Right.
you knew
Yeah,
that
she
she
was
she
saying
wasn't
things
that way.
She
Yeah.
was saying things
Yes.
as it was her
Because she had
her
part of
shtick.
her act,
It
part of
was
her
her
shtick.
shtick.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was her shtick,
Yep.
and she had history.
Right.
Yeah.
And you do that now.
no.
Like a younger performer doing that, now would be
You're
like,
canceled,
oh
man.
no,
That's it.
I
You're
know.
canceled.
People would boo you
Right.
and throw things at you.
But do you think older performers of our generation, it is accepted to continue to
Yes
to
and
use
no.
that? Okay,
Yes
it
and no.
depends.
Because you have older comedians that will still do that shtick. And then you have other comedians, like Jerry Seinfeld is caught in the middle. He likes doing old shtick, but he knows it doesn't work nowadays. And he's having trouble, like I am. What do you do? What do you say? Now, he's got a script that he works from, which is easier. But when you're doing improv, you're just working off the top of your head. But you're taking that second to rethink, well, is this acceptable? Is this approved?
You can't take that
and
second
you can't
now.
take you
Yeah.
can't take that
Yeah,
second
right.
because the moment is gone.
Right.
Now, younger performers, they already have that filter.
Right.
And then they go that thought doesn't enter their head
Interesting.
because they think, oh, that would be ethnically insulting, or that would be sexist.
Right.
Whereas I think of stuff, and I just say it and let the chips fall where they may. Now, fortunately, because I'm older, I'm playing with an audience that's like you.
Right.
And they accept that. They know I'm not a racist. They know I'm not a sexist. So they're going to laugh. I'm a big old brown queen, so they're going to laugh. They're going to laugh. Whereas other people who don't know me go, uh-oh, he shouldn't be saying that. We're going to have to take her behind the woodshed. I'm going to take another sip of my drink. Because this drink, I got a little dry in my throat. Yeah, clinky, clinky. Uh-oh, I can see the bottom of my glass.
We may have to pause and get
Let's
a
take
refill.
a little
Well, I have
pause.
to take a little pause.
Pause, Bill.
Yeah, I'm going to eat this cherry.
Take a
Stand
little
by.
pause. In case you want to sponsor our podcast, here's a little sample of what it might sound like.
Hey, Steph, what's that cocktail you're drinking today?
Well, it's vodka, lemonade, and Sprite with a splash of orange bitters.
Ooh, what kind of vodka did Emilio put in it for you?
Why, it's...
Insert your sponsorship vodka brand here.
and it's quite tasty.
Oh yeah, I love that one too. It makes a great martini. Nice and clean tasting.
Wait a minute. I thought you liked a dirty martini.
Clean.
Or dirty.
It does the trick.
Insert your sponsorship vodka brand here.
Emilio, were there any jobs that you had that were like a regular job that had nothing to do with performing?
Oh, I had regular jobs in and out. You know, I started off as a paper boy, and then I sold women's shoes.
Oh, no.
Which I learned how to be a diplomat. Because after a while, you can look at a woman's foot and you can tell what size she wears.
Okay, let's test that. How big is what's shoe size?
I'd say a 7.
Ha! 9.5.
See, I knew that. I knew it was more than a 7.
Yeah.
But you say that to get them on your side.
Oh, okay.
Because women are vain about their feet. You know, they try not to be.
Yeah.
And other women will tell you their size, but you always bring a half a size or a whole size larger. And when you go up in the back, you know, and you pull that 7, you always pull like a 9 or 9.5. And then when you fit the shoe, and it won't get in because you're putting a hoof in a glass slipper. You know? No, that's shoe top.
Yeah,
Women will
right.
even say that.
Yeah.
Women will even say that's a shoe top. And
Cinderella.
you put it there and you go, oh, this is a European size. And then you
the
switch it
lines.
over. I learned this. And then you pull out the 9 and you slip it in.
Why would
and
someone
it
do that?
fits.
You have to walk in these things.
Yes.
Well.
No. But beauty knows no pain.
Oh my
And and women will endure the pain if it looks good.
That was back in our younger days.
Yeah.
Not me.
No?
Yeah, but see,
I
you're
wear
sensible.
boats. I don't care.
Yeah, you're sensible.
Yeah.
Because nobody sees your shoes other than a
I
glimpse.
go to the canoe shop for
Why
my
do you think
shoes.
Why do you think a lot? Why do you think brides, a lot of them will wear tennis shoes? No one's going to see those shoes. Yeah. And they're going to be standing there for so long.
Oh, I had little flat slippers on. I was like,
Exactly.
screw that.
Exactly.
Yeah, I was
Screw
like,
that.
no.
Yeah.
So after that, so you had some kind of a day job, right? That
Oh, yes.
sustained you.
I had a government job, and I'm teasing, but I worked for Coca-Cola, which in Atlanta is a government job.
Right?
Really.
Exactly.
I worked for them for 11 years. And you learn how to deal with, which I had a pretty good idea of how to deal with customer service and dealing with the public. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you would have days where you would have 7,000 people in one day.
Wow.
Especially during the holidays. I had a woman who finally made it in. And she raised her hand, and I said, "You have a
World
question?"
of Coke, correct?
Yes, at the World of Coke.
The World of Coke is the museum.
Right,
The
exactly.
public comes to.
It's a history of Coke, and it's got the tasting room, which is really why everybody comes.
Right?
You have to taste all those flavors. And this woman raised her hand on a Saturday afternoon in July and said, I don't think I can make, I'm claustrophobic. And I looked at her and I said, well, you picked the wrong day to come to the World of Coca-Cola.
Oh my God.
It's like, when you were standing in line, some people would stand in line for an hour and a half, 2 hours.
Why?
I wouldn't stand in line for an hour and a half, 2 hours to see a piece of the original crucifix. I mean, it's like not worth it. But anyway, they did it. Yeah. And I would go like, I just can't see it. And then I would do like the history of Coke and tell them everything they're going to see.
We went to the World of Coke so many times. My son loved it when he was little.
I have families, especially families from out of the country, who every year I would see them. I knew them by name because when they would have people visit from their native country, they would bring them.
Yeah, it's a good destination.
Yeah. What was the drink in the? He always wanted to go in the tasting room. There was that nasty drink. That was that one
I cannot say.
No, there was this one drink that was from another country. It was a Coke. It was a Coke product from another country.
He's not going to diss Coke. Come on.
No. Well, there was this one. I don't remember what it's called, and it tasted really horrible.
It was awful.
Horrible. And my son would go over, and he would pretend it was really good, and he would take something and he'd go, "This is delicious. You should try this."
Yes.
And then he would wait and watch people drink it and go,
"Oh, yes." And the thing of it is, nowadays they do that same trick that your son did, and they video it,
right?
And then they show it.
Yes,
this was way
they
before,
did that to who's the little I can't say white trash. Oh, I said it. Who's the girl? Who's the little girl that was very popular?
Honey Boo Boo.
Honey Boo Boo.
Yep.
Honey Boo Boo came. She brought her entourage, by the way.
Oh yeah.
She came up and they made her try it.
Yeah.
Is that joke?
and videoed it.
Oh my God! Yeah, and she unswallowed. It was not pretty.
No.
It was not pretty. It was not pretty.
Gross.
Okay, so getting back to improv for a
Yes,
sec.
of course.
Any funny stories you can think of that happened at Agatha's?
All right, at Agatha's, like I said, we would go off script, and we would have a part where people would celebrate their birthdays or anniversaries, and occasionally it would be the engagement. Mm-hmm. And it was, everybody knew what the engagement meant. There'd be a little asterisk by this couple that we would turn over the show to, and they would ask, there would be an engagement. It was very beautiful, usually.
Until
a gentleman stood up, and I turned over the show, and he made his date stand up next to him. And he started off, which is always a warning sign, started off with, I have not known you for very long. But you have taken my heart. And you could see the fear. She looked like a deer in the headlights. In fact, she wasn't looking at him. She was looking at me, which is never a good sign. Because usually the brides know. And everybody knows. Oh, he's going to ask me to marry him. And he went off and he said, I would like you to be my wife. Here's the kicker. I don't have a ring at this time.
Loser.
Yes, exactly. And she looked like she had smelled something bad. And I was like, but I would like you to be my wife. There is that beat, and we all know it, where somebody would fill in the beat with yes or no or what have you. The beat came and went. It was like an 18-wheeler could have ride through that beat. And I went, yay! And started clapping my hands. And everybody started clapping because we all knew what she was feeling. Yeah. And they sat down, and she never said anything. I was just trying to save the room.
Poor guy.
Save the room.
Yeah.
When we came back downstairs for the last act, he was sitting there by himself.
Oh
no, I felt sorry for him. But I'm sorry. You pulled the trigger.
Right. Exactly.
You're the one that went there.
Know your audience.
Exactly. Exactly. First rule of comedy, know your audience. And he didn't follow that. And so he ended up eating dessert. by himself.
Oh, poor guy.
Poor guy.
Poor guy. Yeah. But I'm sure he could find a cousin or somebody who would say yes.
Well, Emilio, what is the best advice you can give to young people wanting to get into improv?
Like any actor or improv actor or anyone who wants to do film, go to as many workshops as you can find. I know you may not be able to afford them, but there are some workshops where they offer teasers. They offer the first workshop for free and see if you like it. Because you may not like the instructor or you may not like the array of people that you have with, but experience is always good. And nowadays, you don't have that many venues. Before, you could go and try different places and whatnot, but nowadays, you don't have that many times to try your craft. So start off in any acting class. If you're in high school or in college, take an acting class. They will teach you the basics. So when someone says speak up, you don't have to say that because you know that you should use your theater voice. Or when they say downstage, you don't back up. No, that's upstage. They mean you to come down. But those are little simple techniques, especially someone who's auditioning you. They're looking for. They're looking for. As soon as you walk into the room, they are judging you. And that's very important. So you want to be professional as soon as you walk in. You want to have your headshot. You want to have your resume. Even if you haven't done that much, they understand that nowadays. But you want to look prepared. And that's for any job.
True.
You want to do some homework. Don't walk in fresh. And I mean fresh, like naive. You want to walk in with having some knowledge of the company, as the theater company, as well as the regular company that you might be working for. So they know that you've done your homework. And if you've done your homework, then they know that you're conscientious, that you always show up on time, if not a little early. So they know that you've done your work. And you ask them if you use first names. And if you want to get in good with an agency, always know the receptionist. Always know her name and who they are.
That is a good tip. Yeah.
Because they're the ones that will help you. Because they're the ear of the producer or who has ever auditioning you. And they will say, well, he called yesterday to see if, how things are going or if there's anything else. And they trust that person. The producers or whoever is doing the audition, they trust that person. Because that means that you're eager. And you're just not in it for fame. If you want to be famous, then you can do what a lot of these kids do. You can be an influencer or get on YouTube or something like
TikTok.
that. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
TikTok.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if you're really dedicated to the craft, then you would take the workshops and you would spend the time to know the people, know the receptionists, know who's auditioning you. One time I didn't get a job, but they remembered me from another job because I came in and I bothered to do that. So that's the best advice I can give you.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, now that we're coming to a close,
So soon? What does that mean? It's time for another drinky.
it's
I have
time
make
to play a
another
little
drink.
game.
Oh, a game. Ooh.
Oh, yeah.
We're playing a little game. It's called What Decade Did This Phrase Come From?
There you go.
Thank you. Blah.
All right, you start.
Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to say
I want to start off by saying that nobody told me math would be involved.
there's no
Right.
math. There's
No,
no
no,
math. We're
no.
going to give you 3 words or phrases that came from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, or the 2000s. And you're going to tell us what decade you think it came from.
I'm going to try.
Yes.
Try.
Oh,
Yeah,
it's gonna be
don't
good.
worry. And then at the end, the bonus round is we're going to give you a modern phrase and see if you know what it means. All right?
Yes.
Okay. The first one is, and it's just for you, a closet disco queen.
Oh, a closet disco queen.
What decade does that phrase come from?
70s?
Yes.
Ding, ding, ding,
Do you know what it
ding.
means?
Repeat it?
A closet disco queen.
Oh, that means it's somebody who is, they're not out of the closet, but, they love disco and dancing. No?
No,
Ew.
it's someone who dances only at home in private, but
Oh.
they won't dance in public.
Yeah, no, yeah, that makes
Same kind
sense.
of
That makes
Yeah,
sense.
yeah.
Yes, yes.
There'd probably be a social media component to that now.
Yes,
if
yeah.
that's
Yes, yes,
now, right? Yeah,
absolutely.
1970 is right. Good. You get 1 point. The next one is fresh. What decade is the word fresh?
Oh, gosh. Is that 90s? Or 80s. No, because it came with the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Yes. Very good. So,
So 80s.
yes,
Yep.
very good. 80s.
Yep.
And what does it mean? Fresh.
It means new, fresh.
Yep.
It really does mean
Right.
fresh.
Yep.
Yeah.
Stylish, exciting,
Exactly.
new. Yes, exactly.
Somebody who's walked into a bar that everybody's there, but this person has just moved in from out of town.
Ooh, you look fresh.
You look fresh. Mhm. And you're wearing something that's very current.
right?
Yeah.
That's very fresh.
Fresh.
All right. How about Bogart?
Oh, that's 60s?
Yeah.
Yes. As in, don't
Don't
bogart
bogart
that
that
joint,
joint,
my
my
friend. Pass it over to me. Oh, good Lord. God, you could get a whole room of people singing that. Or a whole stadium of people singing.
Well, you got all three. So here's your bonus round.
Your bonus round is from, okay, this is a modern
modern
phrase.
phrase.
Okay?
Oh, my Lord.
And it is T-E-A. T.
Tea? Oh, yeah, that's the gossip.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Baby.
Oh, yeah,
didn't
you
know
know who
that.
popularized that is
Yeah.
Miss RuPaul.
Oh.
Spilling the tea.
Okay.
If
Yes.
you get on
Oh, yeah,
any
yeah.
social media, they're like, "Oh, we're
Well,
gonna-
tell us the tea.
Okay,
You know,
time
they'll
for the
tell-
tea."
Yeah, they'll ask it, taking for granted that you knew what it meant. They'll say, well, spill the tea. You know, like you already know what it means. Yeah.
Yep. All right. Thank you so much for letting us interview you,
Always a pleasure.
Emilio. You have
It's
been
really
a
a pleasure.
delight.
No.
Yes.
It's what you want to hear when your date leaves the bedroom. You are a delight. I usually say, I'm glad because I'm not making breakfast.
So to our listeners, we hope you enjoyed this podcast. Make a drink. Join us for the next one. It'll
Please
be
do.
coming soon.
Follow us on social media too. We're on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok.
The links will be in our show notes.
And thanks for joining us. We'll see you next podcast. And as Aunt Millie said, shoulders back, knockers up.
Cheers.
Cheers.